Hello, welcome. I hope your coffee is warm and your mind is ready to wander, because today we're diving into the spirit of Tarkir, quite literally. In this video we'll explore the 5 mighty spirit dragons who embody not just the power but the soul and the colors returning of each clan they return to uplift. From Betor, the voice of the ancestors, to Teval of the opulent Sultai. These aren't just creatures, they're echoes of a past rewritten multiple times. So settle in and let's travel back to a world where time bent and dragons rose again and again. The Absan were always a clan of people who lived, breathed and died with their families. Their ancestors always stayed around to protect and to give guidance. The Absan live in the desert, where there are dangers lurking behind every hill and where the slightest wound can hamper your survival, because there isn't really much to survive on. The Absan have learned from the dragons, who were at that point extinct, to protect yourself, and the Absan were proud of their strong protection, mostly because they protected their families. The green, white and black clan even went as far as bringing their homes with them, either carried or dragged forward by massive war beasts. That's also where we got the real siege rhino from. At this time, Anafensa ruled, leading the Absan houses into battle, rallying them and taking action with them. The Absan at this point did not fear a little death among their ranks if it meant a victory that would help their future clan members. They knew that death was a part of life. But at all times they also knew that victory meant having a home, so creating a safe space was a victory on its own. Through a series of events we entered a different timeline where dragons did get to rule. And with the return of Dromoka, we learned how dragons taught the Absan to protect themselves. Dromoka's skills were on their own an impenetrable fortress. But in taking the lead over the houses of the Absan, Dromoka took away their senses of self. This is exactly what you'd expect when you take the Absan and remove the black color to just be left with Celestia. You get a mindless cult. Dromoka even had the Absan forsake their blood ties, all so that they could properly enter their new family, Dromoka's family, and focus on the now instead of the past. The Absan had to cut down the ancestor trees that they were so proud about to forge new weapons. They became even more protective, and instead of taking their homes and bringing them to war, now they just turtled up home. And Anafensa was the first Absan stronghold to fall. She now walked among them with her own tree to protect. How she could hold on to it for so long is unknown. Perhaps it's because many Absan were so stubborn that they'd still rally under her, apparently in secret. Perhaps they could keep hidden in an enduring sandstorm until the danger of many dragons flying overhead who should have seen them otherwise had passed. But way later, Anafensa's tree was the first one recovered and now stands as a symbol for the revival of the Absan as they once were. And Anafensa herself, now full with leaves from her tree adorning her spirit head like a crown, still answers when her clan needs her most. The ancestors of the Absan were revived, and not easily so. Slowly new trees would be planted to give back a home to the lost spirits that were left without one for so long. Slowly, the ancestor trees would strengthen the Absan in return, and now once more they're ready to march to war with Trample and Lifelink. Really, the revival of the ancestors is not an easy feat. Over time the ancestors have become detached from reality. They've become angry with the present, even attacking their own Absan family members. They were angry because they did not have a home. Only by restoring the kin trees will they tone down and protect their houses again. And with the removal of Dromoka, the Absan have gotten back their fierceness, alongside with their looking at the past. They have added an elite group of warriors, the Yathan, who act outside of clan supervision for the good of the clan. This would not be possible without their black mana. Everyone would have to act under supervision without it, and now they can act on their own. The Absan have regained betrayal, even if it was not for the good of the clan. The drawbacks of mana colors, of course, return together with the positives. But mostly the Absan regained their connection with their ancestors, their view on life that death is not the end, but simply the next part of their cycle. And now they stand together again, to protect together, with all of their members, dead or living in the sands of their land. Even though their new leader, Betor, is not the first to move anymore, they have regained their initiative, because protecting a house was a win on its own, so his ability to let walls attack really shows how the Absan have returned to their former Siege Rhino glory. Of course, the purpose of this video is to look at the spirit dragons, who have been called forth from the soul of Tarkir and have merged with the will of the Khans to return those clans to their former glory. Betor came into being for the Absan. Kin to all means even to the ancestors, and really we see how the Absan are ready to rebuild their walls and protections, for example, where for 10, 20 or 40 toughness you get an effect. To draw cards and become stronger, to untap your creatures for greater fervor, or to make your opponents lose life because the Absan are once again ready to act. In this sense we see Betor as the ancestor's voice too, where gaining life lets you strengthen your creatures with counters. This is because gaining life here means to restore the kin trees, and they will in turn help strengthen the clan and its fortifications. Then, for every bit of life you've lost, you get to return an ancestor to fight as a form of revenge, I reckon. Betor is here to tell us to look around, to look at this world and see what it has endured. A very black mana thing in this sense, just like pride, which we should feel when we look at those marsh flats and their scars. And we will finish each chapter with these beautiful ultimatums. The art is beautiful, but mostly they tell the story of the spirit dragons best. We see Betor, the sign of the Absan, in the far back and the kin tree slightly in the front, returning any number of permanent cards back to the battlefield as a mechanic, because Betor is the voice of the untethered ancestors, those without kin trees, who guides them back to the memory of the Absan and to guide the ones that still live. I think it's beautiful too that in the story the Absan were at first loath to help out against Sarkhan, but they found their personal drive later, really showing what Betor is doing for them in real time. The Sultai previously were a clan of lavish wealth. They controlled trade through black and blue mana, but also used that wealth to strengthen themselves because of their green color, which could also be the color of earthly possession and of valuing your life, even if you're undead. These Sultai even loved to keep pets around, something most clans did not have the luxury to do in this manner, only if they could be hunting party members on their own. The theme of snakes in the Sultai is very prevalent. Through this version of the Sultai, they're seen as what's there to turn into after you die. These beasts are death, but also life, and death can be profit. But mostly these Sultai were perfectly tied to Rakshasa, demons who get stronger with every death around them. But the strength even of the Rakshasa would not last forever. Sinamgar entered the fray, and he was also about death, but not about life at all. Where the Sultai as a clan would fight over wealth, Silumgar just kept it to himself. He would weaken anyone strong enough to be even a remote threat. The Sultai lost their scheming, their plots, and it was replaced by pure death. The Sultai used to honor life, to see its strength and know that there was something to be proud of there. That life could create such beings like these massive turtles, and egotists as they were, they built temples on their beautiful backs. But Silumgar put a stop to these symbols. Well, he changed them at least, to be symbols of death now, to show that the decadence of the ancient Sultai was a mistake, and anyone who would even think of opposing Silumgar was making the same mistake. But even the sweeping, drifting death got complacent with his wealth. Rightly so, because everyone was now so weak that Silumgar could sit around with his piles of gold as he was being surfaced. His chain another reminder of what would happen to those that opposed him. And so the humans got complacent with Silumgar, because, yeah, they should be smart enough not to be turned into a sipsig, a derogatory term for a zombie at that time, and too smart and Silumgar would eat you alive. Mediocrity was the thing to strive towards. And this is what Silumgar's chain used to look like, by the way. Lavish wealth indeed, built upon the dead bodies of those Tasigur had slain, and that's why his stealth ability is so flavorful. The Sultai of ancient times would even turn useless sipsig into furniture to put their expensive fruits on. And when Silumgar took over, Tasigur became an undead chain to hang from his new master's neck and swing around and let everybody know what happened to him. Probably the most striking transformation was of Sidisi, a Naga tyrant that would become a master of poisons. Sidisi was once an all-powerful necromancer and weapons master, honored for what they could do, but Silumgar turned them undead and dishonored, trying to let them almost kill the dragon just to have their poisons taken for Silumgar's use. And now Sidisi rules over the Myers of Tarkir, resurrecting lesser beings and wastes of human undead life, luring them in with false promises because once the rebels against Silumgar attacked, Sidisi would never have been left in power by them. And now with the beauty and opulence of the Sultai restored, the Sipsig now a symbol of honor, Sidisi had to learn a harsh truth, a cruel truth perhaps even. That times change and sometimes you find yourself just not as in power as you once were. That's the danger of lethargy. When the Sultai took over again for themselves, they had taken their time with awakening the honored dead. After destroying the old powers, they gathered their dead and built a new structure of strength and wealth. Now the Sipsig are again honored, to the point of people finding the zombies attractive for all of their life experience and longevity. It's a symbol of great wealth if you were able to buy yourself into the resurrection program now. Once flesh, now gold and jade. Once dead, now alive again. Once respected, now honored beyond imagination. And the pets, they have returned too. This host is returning bears, monkeys, bats, cats and elk as friends, to return from the dead and keep the cycle going once more. Life would never again be stopped in its tracks. Where Silumgar was death, the Sultai are now death and life in one fluid motion. The Sultai have also revived time for recreation, through boxing as a popular sport for example. It combines green's love for strength with the individuality of green and blue as a color combination. And Kotis is now the real leader of the Sultai, as a zombie who is honored for being a strong one. The motif of snakes is back. As a fang keeper, Kotis is not the only ruler, like Silumgar was, but still, he is a strong political figure who keeps the peace between Sultai villages, which is a hard task. In fact, Kotis scorns the old leadership and now opens the palace doors as a show of strength and openness, because the oppression is cleansed and everyone is now slightly more equal. The Golgari cycle of life philosophy that we saw with the Absan is back now too, but in a more practical sense. Not because family sticks together, but because the Sultai know that there's an afterlife, and even if there is not one, the earth will take your essence to return it later. So maybe not all that practical at all. Kotis more than anything just wants to be a farmer some days. More so than just running around fixing relationships between bickering Sultai lords. So now the will of the Sultai is once more, yes, make sure death reigns, but also that in life there can be strength alongside the dead. It's a whole again, not just a destination, but also the journey. Where Silumgar just killed everyone, and I don't know how to say his name, but Teval, I don't know, Teval I'll say, brings back balance between life and death. The Sultai Spirit Dragon makes sure that those that deserve it live or become undead, and those that don't deserve it because they are too weak or not fit enough for the Sultai will forever perish. So Teval mills cards, returns lands, and when you're chosen, or just lucky, you'll become an honored Sipsig. And people come before Teval to ask for judgment on their own, and then Teval will be there to choose to fulfill your wishes, to let you continue service as a Sipsig, or to perish forever in the flames of nothingness. The Sultai under Teval get the classic green value of being judged on what you do rather than not getting a chance at all, or being judged just because you're human, for example. And thus everyone will be judged, cards will be chosen, and Teval will still be an oppressive overlord as the judge of the Sultai will judge fairly instead of tyrannically. The Jeskai monks are a group of strong-willed seekers of what is right and well. They train daily, each monk with different weapons, and daily they change their ways in order to find the one way. Often Jeskai monks did not even know what they were looking for really, but they just kept looking, and that was kind of the point. Before the Temur took them in, the Efreet used to be a perfect fit for the Jeskai. They were drawn to particular organizations within the Jeskai that were centered around trickery to upend the belief systems of others, because the way was always about finding new ways until you found the one way. The Jeskai really were open to these groups because they valued progress over structure even. Structure was to be a step towards perfection. And so yes, the Jeskai were about focus, restraint and structure, but only when it was needed. Even balance had to be in balance, because always being in balance isn't balance. It isn't according to the way, at least. Ojutai entered, and like with the other clans, everything changed. Ojutai would take over and strip the Jeskai of their free spirits. He chose to be the one to choose what balance was and forced everyone in his structure. He would be open to teaching certain individuals to see more knowledge, but he would keep certain nuggets of information from them, or whole gold veins. I think that's why we see Ojutai looking at 3 cards and giving you just one of them. He's choosing what he lets you know. And Ojutai taught other Azorius ways of life, like restraint. He would not eat anything that could grow one day into an even larger bounty. So as long as a fish keeps on growing, it should not be fished out of the ocean. And until your technique is absolutely perfect, you should not stop practicing it. Most of all, Ojutai kept his followers in the dark, while feeding them half-truths. He even made the Jeskai believe in rebirth, so that they'd have the motivation to work hard, so that one day the Jeskai could be returned to their new lives as true dragons. And of course you wanted to be like the Dragon Lord more than anything. Taigam might be the most confusing guy of all, and he likes it that way. In the Khan's timeline he had forsaken the Jeskai in favor of the Sultai. This was possible because the Jeskai were open to you finding your own path towards the way. And Taigam, being a scheming boy, would fit perfectly with the snakes. Here he could strive towards the power he yearned to possess. But under Ojutai, Taigam wasn't allowed to look around so much, so he stayed to learn under Ojutai, eventually becoming his best pupil after finding out Narset was looking for the truth a bit too much. Taigam wanted to be liked by Ojutai so much that it was a purpose to strive towards, even more than the endless ceiling the Sultai could provide. And now that Taigam learns under the Jeskai as a restored clan, he starts to look for opportunities for power once more. For example, by pushing Sargon to eat a dragon's heart and start the dragon storms in earnest. Not sure why he does this yet, but Tygon will find a way to be evil now that he has the freedom to do so again. Or maybe with his newfound freedom within the Jeskai, he could just accept that there is actually a lot to learn here from even his students. But who am I really kidding here? Tygon just seems to act firmly against the freedom of his students, which had taken trying their swift step techniques instead of her sword techniques, for example. Now, during the dragon storms escalated by Tygon, the Jeskai are looking to rediscover the way. Swirling scrolls and dragons that work together, action is now the way forwards. The Jeskai take 2 turns to do an Ojutai and learn what needs to be learned, and then it's time for your creatures to attack. To do something as they gain double strike once for every non-creature spell played in that turn. The Jeskai have changed in many ways. They stopped looking endlessly for an end result. Now they started enjoying the thing that they're doing again. They've started looking at every step along the way instead of just at the way. They're also combining theories with practice again, by turning brushstrokes into a fighting style, for example. They're even now trying to enter other clans' lands to spread their way of living. This propaganda might land slowly with the Absan, for example, who slightly like unity but only within their families. But at least fighting the Absan on it is a way to grow as a person. It's definitely training. More than at any other place, the will of the Jeskai shows us what the Jeskai are about now. They discard their hand, discarding old principles, and draw 5 cards, letting you look at the next pages and then put their theories into practice by giving flashback to all you have discarded or used in the past. Narset had tried to do the same under Ojutai, looking for answers in the past. She found scrolls telling her about knowledge from the then extinct Jeskai and wondered what they knew. This also led her to believe that there must have been more than what Ojutai taught them. In her previous iteration in the Khan's timeline, the Jeskai and Narset had been all about the path. There was no beginning and no end, just a series of moves. It was about the dance, not the choreography. And Narset had been exiled then, forced to roam Tarkir, probably for more answers. But also she had more to do than just wander the plains of Tarkir. Just when she returned to Tarkir without being a planeswalker, she could go on and find ways to restore it. And thus she rallied the people from all 5 clans and found the spirit dragons. With the help and Taigam and Elsha of the Infinite, Narset restored the Jeskai. Rebuilt monasteries, schools, flying monasteries, and made way for a hope for the future. Together, in unity, but also with a will and a dream. On her own, Narset now shows the Jeskai that notions have to be discarded. Discard your hand sometimes to draw cards equal to the amount of spells you've cast. Action is needed to learn from theory, and each step along the way is a decision that shapes the end result, the future. So every step should be thought about. Sounds Azorius, but thinking about each step is actually very red-natured. Meanwhile, together with Shiko here, Narset shows the people of the Jeskai that unity is needed to follow the way truly. You have to work together to shape the future. The Jeskai isn't solely focused on personal growth anymore, like it used to be in the Khan's timeline. Narset and Shiko together allow you to double spells that target the permanent or player, because you need to be together to make the largest steps. And for peace, leading by example truly shows how they're now all about examples, not just about ideas. Shiko is entirely shaped out of the concept of the way. That's very Jeskai on its own, but Shiko with Vigilance shows to attack alongside your students, and playing a spell from your graveyard is truly red under the Jeskai, because it means looking at lessons of the past and actually applying them. The Jeskai are now rebellious again, and as long as it's from the heart, that's okay. As long as you feel or know that what you're doing is right, you should rebel. You should leave a legacy and you should be remembered. And even if you will not be seen doing something, if you will not be remembered, you still should do what you must do because you know what you have done. The way is more important than fitting in, and it's more important than being remembered. But you should do what you need to do or be remembered if it fits within the way. There is balance again now. And I think the inspired ultimatum fits, because it shows the Jeskai unity, gaining life, restoring the monasteries, sharing understanding and knowledge and letting it run freely through schools, for example, and working together to use all that knowledge to look for ending strife on Tarkir. Or to end the Dimir colors, in other words. The Mardu have always been a bloodthirsty band of warmongers, but they started off as one that did appreciate being in a horde. Because, as one, you can do more than a singular warrior ever could. The warriors felt pride and honor for those that had fought beside them, and knew that those who died in battle deserved their rest. Life wasn't just endless fighting in at least this way. And the Mardu had crude battle tactics, like setting an ogre on fire and pointing him in the right direction. They had even learned to keep the goblins away from the torches, so that's real teamwork there. But when Paragon entered, the Mardu was reduced to only attacking and being aggressive. Everyone got haste because they did not need blockers back. Everything was about attacking, simple attacking as well, because casting the same spell twice would cost you 10 life. Paragon will find you if you ever strategize. The Mardu now would wreck anything they'd find. Food, artifacts and statues, things that they previously might not really even care about, would now also be destroyed. The Mardu were encouraged to stop thinking and to start only doing. And if you stopped thinking, the only thing that should fill your mind was blood. A crave for battle. A craving, perhaps even. That's everything to you now. And Zurgo is the saddest Mardu story we have. Once he was a helm smasher, a warrior leading other warriors by being such a big warrior that the people running behind him just had to be the mopping crew. He attacked each combat if able, so seems like he was just there to attack. But he had indestructible too, so that he would be alive to tell his own stories to his people. And the stories had value. He showed people that it was a weakness to cower behind walls. That the people should live freely under the wind, because freedom will make us strong. But Paragon made sure to make Zurgo into a coward. One that would dash in quickly, get some damage in, and definitely never got stronger from freedom or from fighting or other creatures. He can't even block bigger creatures. But as we're seeing now, Zurgo outgrew Paragon. He just needed his first battle under the dragon to start growing again. And really he did. Now that the Mardu have the white color again, Zurgo can attack together with his mates, following dragon storms around, being free and taking down anything that emerges from the storms, mostly dragons, but also chickens sometimes. Zurgo is now once again a symbol for the Mardu, setting up camps right beneath the storms, ready to take on its thunder, to rally his hordes and to be an example. He even goes ahead and hosts tournaments right beneath those storms, just because fighting under him is just that little bit more metal. He sets an example not because of his big body, but because of his warriors that follow him this time, not even allowing them to be sacrificed in battle anymore. He is an actual safe commander now. Thunder and storms are what brought the Mardu back to life, drawing cards and losing life. A very Rakdos thing, but also whenever a creature enters you drain an opponent. Really rallying the ranks did everything to revitalize the Mardu. All they needed were willing warriors. And now they built their future once more, together carrying pole after pole and setting up tent after tent, when they're needed to strike down storms and lightning themselves. They also got a card with the perfect card name, All Out Assault, attacking with all you've got and everything you've got to end the battle quickly, often even before the dragon can take up into the air. Beautiful too how this enchantment grants you extra battles, exactly what the Mardu want. And dying in battle is always okay if you have Death Touch, because you'll at least take one enemy down with you. Peak Mardu philosophy is the way in which they heal each other. With the same magic that can strike down armies, they defibrillate, they shock each other back to life, just long enough for one last battle together. In short, the Mardu new philosophy is getting an army together and using everyone's muscle to achieve shared purposes, quick like lightning. More than even Zergo, Alessia shows what the Mardu are about, smiling, smirking, laughing at death or fate. She is there on the front lines shouting orders at people already willing and ready to do what is needed, greeting death with action in your heart. Alessia says, attack, I will bring you back to life. We will persevere, but we do need to make today something to remember, or you will not be remembered or revived at all. Or let's say die, but make your death worthy of legend. Well, she said that, but really Culligan's dragons would destroy whole armies with one breath, so it's not weird to hesitate at the sight and smell of that. But Alessia would not lay down arms. She would keep laughing, even if it was clear that you'd lose. So into old age she fought on with those willing to still run after her, growing stronger with each fight as Zergo had done once before, and continuing not to keep her people safe, but to return them to fight again after they've properly fought the danger away. And most beautiful, I think, is how her concept outlived her mortal body. Alessia who smiles at death has become smile at death while being dead. Alessia is gone, but the Mardu have learned from her actions. Even though so many of her people died in vain, she is remembered for her persistence, and her people's persistence in the same manner. For the way too many times she got up again to fight another day and night. And still she keeps resurrecting her people, but now they return stronger than ever, looking towards the future, because the Mardu know to fight is to live. And Neriv is here to combine all the Mardu stand for, walking among his armies, at the vanguard of the army, as the heart of the storm, which is of course on Tarkir the most dangerous place to be. He still wants you to attack with haste like Culligan did, but he doesn't force you to do so as much. He just strengthens you when you do it. But you do have to follow your heart, and attack together. Not just when you're ready, but when it's best for the army to have your strike at the opponents. Again, the ultimatum says it best. Strength comes from community. Together we can destroy our enemy. We will destroy our enemies, but in this timeline, we will do it together. Not like Culligan earlier in this timeline, who destroyed everything alone, and thus Ruinous Ultimatum destroyed all non-lands from your opponents, not your own non-lands. The Temur are a clan of people who live with respect for nature. They know it can be strong, they want to be like it for its strength and tenacity, and the Temur know that without nature providing them with barely enough sustenance, the Temur will die out eventually. This elephant is given discs for each Temur hunter paying its respect. The Temur live by stories like these, but sadly, the elephants were eaten by dragons later in another timeline, so here they survive. But the Temur of old also told stories about the future and the past. They knew that many things were written about the past and would be written about the future. They would plan ahead with food stocks and would save some for their children to come. Like we've seen with many other sort of Gruul-colored clans, they even learned tactics before. As a Gruul clan, learning tactics can be hard, but Blue helped them do it. Of course, it is just throwing rocks off a cliff, but knowing that they hit harder from up high is really advanced. More than anything, the Temur would keep their respect for their ancestors, because they'd roared, they had sung, and they had whispered. And those sounds, stories and melodies would continue on in the heart of the wild and the heart of the young Temur warriors. But like I said, someone ate all the elephants, and that was Tarkir, cruel personified, eater of worlds, with boundless hunger. She did not even have a word on her for the people of her clan. It's flying, trample, and giving dragons double strike while attacking. Nothing about the people. But they do tell stories about her hunger, the people do. Because that's the thing the Temur or Tarkir have to watch out for the most. Even more than the lava, the Tarkir warriors have to make massive risks by, for example, sailing on a lava fall. Because if they aren't fast enough in feeding their master, they would be eaten themselves. Even the cold, which the Temur used to respect very much, is a lesser danger. The Tarkir warriors thrive on anger and emotion alone, forgetting their stories or the respect they had for nature. They now challenge nature, skimming the world of its food supplies, all to feed the dragon. A human 6'6" with flash, that's a beefy boy. Surak apparently cleaved a bear in half to create his shoulder pads. He had old Temur that simply told stories about him defeating a bear, and that would earn him his status, because of the stories told about his feats. The plain presence of Surak, because of these stories, would inspire other Temur hunters to have trample. But old Surak would use strategy. He had taught his people to get the high ground before bringing it to their enemies. It might only mean that the enemy can't escape, but that's higher thinking again there. Surak lost his stories. His shoulder pads became that of a deer, and he lost his spear. He now was allowed to call for hunts because the greatest honor is to feed Tarkir, and instead of inspiring trample by his presence, he now needs dragons around him to hasten the people into doing what Tarkir needs them to do. No high ground, just quick hunting to feed the dragon. After many years, Surak has refound his respect for nature, along with his brothers. I mean, his antlers are glowing with elemental magic, so that must mean that he is friends with nature, and he can't be countered again. And bears and wolves follow him around now, which means Surak must outhunt them by a stretch. And he is done feeding Tarkir. He now feeds the clan, and he protects them, or at least tells stories about them by having you draw cards when they're targeted. Where Surak failed to stand against Tarkir to tell her that hunting yetis is a bad idea, because he knew that Tarkir liked eating them so much. The hunters of the new Temur know that a yeti will always see you before you see it, and that it is foolish to try and get one. But the Temur are way more smart than just hunters. They got their song back, the endless song. It must be rather annoying as a song, but it will never end. But it does deliver elephants. It delivers them back because now they are again created by the spirit dragon. Because the land is restored to its former strength, and many warriors to come will hang discs from their armor. And then when it's time, everyone's power and toughness will be doubled for you to attack all out and feast all out. The unending song or whisper is the sound that comes from the past, present and future. It's nature's call in lines of existing creatures, of centuries worth of ancestors, and of any creature that will live in the future. It is a line, and that's the most important to nature. And proclaiming that heritage was possible because the effigies of Tarkir were smitten down with claws of elemental magic and ropes of natural rope. Just ropes. The huge draconic statues were pulled to the ground. Yes, the Temur still find inspiration from all that's around them, like cute dogs or wolves perhaps, but they also now return to using elemental magic, all because they are once more in tune with nature. They even took it upon themselves to restore the lands after the invasion ruined it some years ago. And I do appreciate that the notions of the war with Phyrexia are just slowly fading away as if they never happened. The Temur now play games again, because they have space to do so and the food. Because of these bouts they're able to find the most promising warriors to lead their people next. And the people have started to celebrate again. When there is a time of unbroken nights, which happens periodically, where the sun doesn't come up, the teamer look for the first lights when nature sings to celebrate as they sing along. And because the people are attuned, nature helps them too, by sending these beautiful beasts, for example, who are just here to help because they had found some nice people to hang with and perhaps there was some food involved. One person that shows us the power of the new teamer properly is Ashki, who has been chosen as Dragonclaw because she can fight and because she has the teamer spirit, listening to the spirits of the past and such things, but mostly because she can double her power and toughness at a whim, which is a rather cool ability in lore. She even rediscovered the teamer ability of avalanches, where before the teamer threw boulders or just ran down a slope, they now ride rams to become the actual avalanche. And Ashki, the roar of the teamer, grows stronger with every strong part of nature restored. She even deals damage when something draconic is willing to enter alongside her. Damage to each opponent, I must add. While Ashki is flexing on us, Ureni is soaring over the forests, screaming her mighty, unending song forever, annoyingly. For every land restored, she deals damage to creatures or planeswalker. Anything, really. I hope that's because she won't stop singing and it's hurting their ears. Really, the song will never end because Ureni is even here for the new unwritten songs to bring us new ones of the future. And in this way, Ureni summons more dragons, maybe as an antithema against the dragon storms. Is that a word? Anathema? Something against it. But more than anything, Ureni is the shaper of new parts of nature, of lions, fish, trees and new elephants restored. She shapes them into being under the moon and the spirits, and she sings and creation responds. Just like you can respond by clicking that small subscribe button down below. Thank you very much. Bye. I hope you have a nice day and thank you for watching.